Hi, Tyler at Infidelity here. Today we're going to talk about what I would consider the world's best headphone and how it's evolved. We're going to talk about the Sennheiser HD800 first. This is a Sennheiser HD800. This came out in 2009, I believe, 2008. And was a revelation at the time. It has extraordinary articulation and transient response. This headphone is considered to be one of the best imaging headphones in the world. It is incredibly able to retrieve detail in music recordings. It's just an incredible headphone. The problem is that it also had some really troublesome problems. The main one being a resonance at around 6 kilohertz, and that's at a frequency that makes sibilant and high frequency sounds quite piercing and distracting. A peak at 6 kilohertz is not a good thing. And one enthusiast, Arnaud, came to believe that this resonance occurs, and I'm going to give you a little close-up view of the inside of this headphone. The driver is a toroidal ring driver right here. So it's a driver that's shaped like a ring, and it actually has an empty hole in the middle, and we're going to come back to that in a few minutes. But basically, Arnaud discovered that there's a little piece of material back here on the earpiece that's structural, and this provides a little echo and therefore can create a little resonance in the headphones, and he did some finite element modeling and found that to be a problem. And at the time, a bunch of headphone enthusiasts started developing these little shapes that can be put inside the headphone to damp the reflections off the surfaces of that trapezoidal piece in the rear of the headphone. And these little pieces go in the headphone like this and get glued in. This, of course, isn't going to get glued in, but goes in the headphone like that. It's a little difficult to see, and it did help. It helps kill this resonance. Well, the problem is that this felt material is likely to absorb sweat and moisture over time and start to smell a little bit, maybe. Who knows? At any rate, that's not the kind of approach that Sennheiser would take to solving the problem, but they certainly saw a bunch of enthusiasts working on it, and evidently came to the conclusion that they could do a much better job themselves. And so, just recently, Sennheiser has come out with the new HD800S. This is a $15.99 headphone, which is, it's hard to almost say it, but it's a bargain at that price, considering all the very high-priced headphones that are out there right now. And given the performance of this headphone, it's really great that we can have a headphone of this caliber at a reasonably affordable price point. What Sennheiser did to fix the problem is, in the middle of the driver, in this little hole right here, they covered the hole slightly, and you might be able to see this. It looks like a little donut in the middle there, and that's actually in front of an empty space. And I've got another video that you can look at that gives a much closer look to this empty space. But this empty space with the little neck and the opening on it, you can see that this this dot with the hole in the middle is partially covering the outside of that area and making a little bottle with a hole on top. And just like if you blow across the top of a beer bottle, you can get a tone. You could create a resonance inside this chamber. I think Sennheiser also put some additional material behind this grid here on the back side of that hole to make the bottle a little more closed. Well, that's called a Helmholtz resonator, and I don't know if this is working exactly like a Helmholtz resonator. There's different kinds of resonators, half-wave and quarter-wave resonators, but nonetheless, not only can you make resonators emit sound and amplify sound, but resonators can also be anti-resonant. They can be a half wavelength out of phase with the tone of interest, and these resonators can kill a tone. And so that's what Sennheiser did, is in this empty space in here is just exactly the right size to be anti-resonant to the 6 kilohertz tone that can be stimulated by the shape of the inside of the cup. So it kills the resonance and it does a great job. Measurements, if you look at the article on innerfidelity.com, linked at the bottom of this video, you can read all about it. But bottom line, this little thing does a dandy job of killing this 6 kilohertz peak. And that peak made the previous Sennheiser HD800 could be very sharp and fatiguing to listen to, needles drilling into your eardrums at times with the wrong kind of music could really light them off. In these headphones, that's pretty much gone, and now the upper mid-range and treble is just absolutely apparently flawlessly articulate in a lot of ways. It just really does a fabulous job of bringing out all the details. But there was another problem with the HD800. Besides the 6 kilohertz spike, this headphone is still a little cool. It needs some warming up. It needs to get a little more bass oomph into it. Otherwise it sounds a bit cool and sterile. Certainly with the peak it did. And Sennheiser, I believe, and this is just a guess on my part, but they did something to increase the second harmonic distortion in the low frequencies to extend the bass. Now, an open headphone like this is very hard to increase the bass response on an open headphone like this. On a closed headphone, you can have that area around in between the driver and the ear sealed and providing back pressure from the low frequencies and can kind of keep them contained in the ear and extend the bass. On an open headphone, you can't do that. And below the primary resonance of the driver, this is the main resonant frequency of the driver, usually between 60 and 150 hertz. In this case, it's 110 hertz roughly. Below that frequency, the response of the driver starts falling off. The efficiency of the driver falls off. And as a consequence, the low frequency is not as well extended as would be ideal. So there's a way to increase the perception of bass response without actually making the bass response go lower. It's used sometimes in little boom boxes because they're limited in their size, they're limited in their low frequency extension. And what they do is they add a little bit of second harmonic distortion to the low frequency notes. So if I put in a 40 hertz tone, the second harmonic would be at 80 hertz, which is still low in frequency in the bass. And but it would give it more warmth. It would have a more sense of warmth with this added second harmonic distortion. It's an effective way to get something to sound a little warmer. Now the problem, of course, is it is distortion, and so it's not ideal. But there is no ideal solution for acoustics engineers when increasing the extension and level of the bass response on an open headphone. And so, from my measurements, I did measure 20 dB more second harmonic distortion on the HD800S than on the HD800. And when I listen to the two headphones, I do hear this headphone as being very nicely tuned in terms of the warmth of the headphone. And so this headphone, unlike its older sibling there, the HD800S, does have a very pleasing response in terms of its overall tonality, and is more musical to listen to In fact, one of the amazing things about the Sennheiser HD800 is a lot of times musicality comes from, well, let's say tubes, and tubes of course add distortion. Well, you get musicality from this euphonic character. This one gets its musicality mostly from its clarity, which is quite a stunning thing. On the other hand, I did hear the bass as not being as tight and authoritative and clear as on the HD800. The problem is the HD800, the level of the bass is not high enough. So you're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. This headphone is significantly more musical, but you get a little bit of congestion or looseness, but it's just a little bit. But you do get a little bit of it, I feel. Well, along comes the modifiers, because they didn't stop with these felt rings. They tried all sorts of stuff. And for example, here's a picture of one of the modifications that's currently being done. It's basically a piece of carpet liner cut to a particular shape with a wedge in it that allows you to fold it up a little bit and take on the right shape to stick in the inside the cup of the earphone, like the other part is. And that I measured that. It wasn't as effective as some of the other modifications, one of them being this one, and it's not going to be easy for you to see, but again, I have a video of this. You can see that in this headphone there's a little something in that well. And what it is, it's a little puck-shaped thing with a hole in the middle that goes down to a solid piece of paper that Saroja, one of the members of Super Best Audio Friends, came up with. He, rather like Edison, when he was figuring out how to build a light bulb and looking for a filament that worked, he just says, well, we'll just try everything. Well, Saroja appears to have tried just about everything. He built a measurement system so he could follow along and see how he was making changes, and in the end came up with this modification of this little nub. And I have another video that I've recently published that shows you this mod close-up, this Super DuPont resonator mod close-up and how to install it. But I can tell you from measurements that it does a pretty good job of getting close to the amount of 6 kilohertz resonant killing that the HD800S does. Doesn't do it quite as good as Sennheiser did it, but it's close. And so the other thing about this Super DuPont resonator mod is that it doesn't change the bass characteristics of the headphone. I'm not sure how Sennheiser changed the bass characteristics of the headphone to add the second harmonic distortion, but this headphone, even with this fix in it for the Super DuPont resonator fix to kill the 6 kilohertz, remains a tad cool sounding. And so I EQ'd this headphone. If I run the headphones with a parametric equalizer, I can get them to sound both fairly similar, and they sound fairly similar to start with. But the difference is when I bump up the bass a little bit, and even though this has more bass than, or perceptively more bass than the HD800, to my ears it's still not quite enough, and I would like to add a little more and add a little more low bass extension, because it still falls off below the resonant frequency of the driver. But when I add more bass to this headphone with the equalization, it tends to get a little murkier sounding because of the distortion, and it tends to draw attention to the bass a little more than normal. When I listen to the HD800 with a Super DuPont resonator in it equalized, what you have is this overwhelming sense of clarity, and the clarity goes all the way into the bass. This is a fabulous headphone with the modification in it, if you can use it with an equalizer to warm it up some. If you're not going to be using an equalizer, So if you're using an equalizer, I think the Super DuPont mod on an HD800 is a great choice, and actually is a bit superior to the 800S. But if you're not going to be using EQ, I would clearly prefer the 800S, as it's got a better tonal balance. The last thing to note is that in the process of doing the mod for this, you're actually partially destroying the seal and some glue in a couple of places, and of course the headphone isn't going to be as long-lived. There's that part of it. If you don't want to be messing around with very expensive headphones, potentially breaking them, and you can break this headphone if you put a screwdriver through the driver, and you'll need to get a screwdriver or something quite near the fabric of this thing, so you do get your screwdriver near the driver. At any rate, if you don't want to mess with all that stuff, the 800S is absolutely a great choice. The biggest question for me was it time to knock the HD800 off the wall of fame and replace it with the 800S? Well, since I have to make recommendations based on headphones without tweaking, without equalization, without anything like that, I've just got to do it on the bare, out of the box, what does this headphone sound like recommendation. My clear preference is for the new HD800S because it's warmer and more inviting and all sorts of stuff, so it doesn't have that annoying peak in it. So yeah, this headphone is a lot more versatile and a lot more forgiving than its HD800 predecessor. On the other hand, it does have that little bit of distortion in the bass, and if somebody is going to be EQing it, I don't know. It's a tough one. I might take a stock HD800 over a stock HD800S if I was going to use EQ on it all the time. So in a pro setting, you might still go that way and just tune out that 6 kilohertz resonance with an equalizer, although that doesn't work as well as the modifications, the Super DuPont modification. At any rate, just to quickly wrap up here, the new HD800S comes with about a 10-foot cable with a 1/4-inch plug on it, and also now comes stock with a cable that has a 4-pin XLR connector on it. There's a nice presentation case that can keep your headphones nice and cozy in there, and it also comes with a little fabric bag to store cables in. So yeah, the new HD800S, not perfect, but I would still say it's the world's best headphone in stock form. So that's pretty cool. I hope you get a chance to hear one of these. It's an eye-opening experience for anybody. These are great headphones. The HD800 was a great headphone, and I hope you get a chance to play around with one soon and have a listen. If you've got an HD800 now, it may be worth your while to check out my other video and see if you'd like to perform the modifications of it. And a big shout out to the guys at Super Best Audio Friends who shipped up some another couple of sets of HD800Ss to me so that I could measure more than one pair that I got from the PR folks at Sennheiser, and to ensure that my measurements were on the up and up, and it wasn't just on a headphone that had been around the block too many times and had some funny characteristics to it. So thank you guys at Super Best Audio Friends, and thank you guys for doing all this work. There are a ton of modification threads over at Super Best Audio Friends that are linked to in the resources section of the article on innerfidelity.com. Thanks for sitting through this long one, and I hope you get a chance to hear a pair of Sennheiser HD800Ss soon. See you next time.